Okay, so I propose we start. Other participants will probably join in as we speak, but I would already like to welcome you to today's virtual workshop. Great to see you all here and many thanks for joining us. My name is Valeria Kunz. I'm the head of education at Save the Children Switzerland office. And I'm also the convener of the RECI Working Group on Education in Emergencies. The RECI stands for the Réseau Éducation et Coopération Internationale, so the Swiss Network for Education and International Cooperation, which is composed of different NGOs, practitioners, and academia. The Education in Emergencies Working Group was launched early this year to enhance knowledge exchange and cooperation around the topic of education in emergencies. And when we did a survey at the beginning of the year, what topics would be of interest for the EiE Working Group, capacity building on education in emergencies was one of the topics that clearly stood out. This also reflects the growing demand in the sector, I believe, with education becoming increasingly recognized and funded as a key component of humanitarian response. Save the Children has many years of experience with its Education in Emergencies professional development program, and therefore the idea emerged to present this work and the different EiE training opportunities in a webinar. And I'm very happy that we managed to have the two speakers here today who know the EiE professional development program best within the whole global Save the Children network. We have Arlo Kitchingman, who is a learning solutions specialist and EiE focal point with Save the Children UK. And we have Sean Long, who's an education in emergencies advisor working for Save the Children Norway and supporting the EiE professional development program with technical inputs. As we have quite a lot of participants today, I propose that we do the introductions of each of you in the chat. So if you like, you can enter your name, your position, your organization, and maybe also the country where you are living in the chat, so we can get to know you a bit better. Thank you in advance for doing that. For some of the technicalities, I would like to ask you to please stay muted during the workshop. You will have the opportunity to ask questions in the chat later while the two speakers will be presenting. There is a possibility to show also subtitles, which can help for your better understanding. You can click on the live transcript button at the very bottom of the Zoom window, where you can choose to activate or deactivate the subtitles in your settings. The meeting is being recorded also, and I would like to draw your attention to this fact. So if you don't feel comfortable with this, please let us know also through the chat function. And now I'm happy to hand over to my colleagues Arlo and Sean, please.
Thank you very much, Valeria, and good morning, everybody. It's great to be here to present to you today. Those of you who know me already know I can talk a lot about this program and always like the opportunity to do so. So thank you for joining us. We've got quite a lot to get through, so Valeria has already introduced us and our bios, well, our titles and our photos are on the screen. So we'll move on. So we're going to start with you've probably seen this already, I think, in the information that was shared with you when you signed up for this session. This is the agenda for the session today. We've done the introductions. We're going to have a quick look at the overview of the Education Emergency Professional Development Program. Then we're going to have a look at the impact and reach of the program to date. Then there'll be a brief pause for you to ask any questions you may have about the program based on what we have already presented to you. We're then going to go into looking at one of the components of the EiE Professional Development Program, which is the online course with a specific focus on one of the new EiE Online course units, which is Learning Through Play and Education Emergencies. You may have seen it being promoted last week when it was launched. Following that deep dive into the EiE Online course, we'll wrap up and have a look at and give 15 minutes for any questions that you may have about that, specifically focusing on how what we presented links to your work or potentially links to your work. So we'll start off then with the overview of the program. I mean, again, I could talk a lot about this. I've been lucky enough to be involved in the program for the last, since its inception 6 years ago. The first 3 years as a EiE technical advisor, advising on the content, and then for the last 3 years, excuse me, managing the program at the global level. So the aim of the program is to support education emergency and education practitioners working in emergency-prone contexts to develop the competencies that they need to initiate, design, and implement timely and quality education emergency responses. So that's the overall aim of the program, and it's worth reminding ourselves of that throughout. The program, as I just mentioned, was launched back in 2015. It was informed and the funding was mobilized or secured using a series of global and regional capacity gap analyses, which clearly indicated the need for such a program. The program is competency based in that we developed a competency framework around the curriculum that was developed at its inception, but it has evolved a lot since then. I'll touch again on that later, particularly in light of the new or relatively new EiE competency framework. The program has evolved to include multiple products and courses, which again I'll touch on now, and has also moved from being at its inception a Save the Children focused training program into what is now a far more interagency or sector-facing program. And it includes now contributions and partnerships with a range of actors that are on the screen there, including EiE, Lego Foundation, IKEA Foundation, War Child, Plan International, and so on. So I'll touch on the, well, not touch on, I'll go through the products and the structure of these. Again, it's worth reminding ourselves of the primary target audience. The primary target audience has been from the beginning and remains education emergency or education practitioners who are both based in or working in emergency or fragile contexts, with a particular focus on national and local organizations. And again, I'll come back to that when we look at our KPIs, our key performance indicators later. So the program started as more of a traditional training program back in 2015, as in it was mainly involved webinars delivered by experts on particular topics, some online discussion, and a large component of it was face-to-face. And the face-to-face included quite a lot of content as well as a simulation at the end of it. What's changed is that it's and we've changed the way it's delivered. We've made it much more blended. We've front-loaded the content so that most of the content is done remotely online, either facilitated or self-directed, which allows the face-to-face time, which obviously we haven't had for the last couple of years, but when we did have that before then, it allows the face-to-face time to be used to focus on the application of the learning and us observing the application of learning in the students. So there's been quite a shift in the way the course has developed over or delivered over the last 6 years. So the more traditional EiE training program, as it was known back in 2015, evolved into what became the EiE Advanced course, or the Certificate in Advanced Studies. It also evolved into being an accredited course with the University of Geneva. Our partnership with them allows it to be accredited. It grew in size. It became approximately 450 learning hours, which equates to the Certificate in Advanced Studies, which University of Geneva accredits. It became more regionally based. So it started off being more delivered at the global level. It shifted to the regions. We have regional hubs in East and Southern Africa, in the Middle East, and also a nascent hub in Western Central Africa, all supporting the delivery, or actually mainly doing the delivery now of the of the various courses. I'll move on to the other course now. So that was the advanced course, and that was the 450-hour long course. That's a big chunk of learning. It was highly intensive in terms of delivery. It was intensive for the students as well, which meant we couldn't get many students actually through the course each year. We could only deliver one course per year per region, and each cohort was approximately 30 students. That's not a lot of throughput. So we made the decision a couple of years ago to split the course into two, to move a large chunk of it, approximately 200 hours of it, online. The reason for this was both to improve accessibility and also sustainability. Obviously, the content remains online even if the facilitated course doesn't continue to be delivered. And it also allows for this sort of flexibility in terms of making it stackable. So these two courses are still linked, even though they're now separate. So students who go on to do the advanced course, the accredited advanced course, have to have done the online units first. So a lot of the content, the core content, is in the online course. They then go into the advanced course, and this is where the facilitated modality of delivery allows them to explore those topics in more depth and also apply it more to their contexts and their specific needs, or the needs of the context. So this is a process that's been underway for the last couple of years and is still in train, and will continue hopefully into next year. So those are the two earlier courses. A more recent addition is the third course there, the EiE Fundamentals course. Again, recognizing that online courses have their restrictions in terms of access as well, and recognizing that 200 learning hours, although you don't have to do all of it, you can do it, there's 35 courses there, so you can pick and choose actually, but recognizing online learning also has its barriers. We also then developed the EiE Fundamentals course, which is approximately 50 learning hours in total, so considerably less, and is a facilitated course delivered at the regional level. So for example, our regional hubs in East and Southern Africa, for example, have delivered the EiE Fundamentals course to, I think, 5 or 6 countries in the region upon request. And it's, again, they're delivered via the, not again, but they're delivered via the Education Emergency Working Groups or clusters. So again, they're sector facing. These are lighter in terms of content, but they're practically focused, and they are facilitated in a way which is more accessible to a lot of practitioners in those countries. So those are broadly the 3 courses which we have delivered, which we have established and delivered. The link between them is worth making and is on the left-hand side here, in that, and this is part of the whole sustainability model of the program, in that the advanced course students are expected to give back to the program. And we often use the strong graduates from that program to help us deliver subsequent advanced courses in the regions. Also, we ask graduates to help us deliver the EiE Fundamentals course. So, for example, we've had in Zimbabwe, in Somalia, in Ethiopia, we've had graduates help us deliver, or help the regional hubs deliver the fundamentals courses in those countries, which is a great model, I think, and works and is increasingly working well, and one we want to continue to promote. The other links are that I already mentioned. The EiE online content is a foundational content for the advanced course. Again, that lightens the load in terms of our teaching, in terms of our facilitation, meaning when students come to the advanced course, they've already got that foundational knowledge there, which we can then build on with our the way that the advanced course is delivered through online platform, through discussion forums, through webinars, through assignments, and so on, through a face-to-face where possible, or if not, remote simulation, training of trainers, and finally what we call a cascade or skills sharing assignment. Again, I'll touch on that a bit later. So those are the main. Oh, sorry. The last link there is also that the foundational online unit can also be used as part of the fundamentals course if it's appropriate to do so, internet connectivity, etc., allowing. So that's the products and the structure of the products of the EiE Professional Development Program. So I'll move on and touch on the curriculum. So I mentioned the number of learning hours per course already, and these are broken down in the following way, as you can see on screen now. The key thing about this is that for the different courses, the fundamentals course, the intermediate course, or the intermediate online course, because it's an intermediate level online course, and the advanced course, the different modules and the units within them, which I'll share with you in a moment, they don't change. What changes is the depth of learning and the learning objectives linked to them. So if you're thinking about Bloom's taxonomy, typically we're looking at the fundamentals level, we're looking at things like describe, explain. Intermediate level is more about application, and the advanced level is more about them being able to synthesize, design, etc. Again, I'll look at some of those sort of those learning verbs that we use when we look at the EiE competency framework in a moment. But that's a key part of our curriculum. The content or the topics, let's say, doesn't change. It's the depth of content and the learning objectives that it relates to. Because we feel that regardless of the level, all of the topics are relevant. But obviously, depending on your level of responsibility, the way you apply them, or the level you apply them, or the level you lead on those particular topic areas will change. So I'll briefly go through some of the topics within the modules. So module 1 is foundational concepts and frameworks, and we look at those 4 different topics or unit areas within that. The foundations of education emergencies, barriers to and aims of, quality and integrated education emergencies, and the humanitarian development nexus. Again, we see this as a particularly important foundational aspect of content. The second is cross-cutting issues and approaches, and there are lots that fall under that, and probably a lot more that could. Looking at things like protection, one of the key arguments for education emergencies is it's a key part of protecting children in crises. Participation as a foundational approach to doing EiE properly, safeguarding, gender responsive EiE, inclusive EiE, conflict sensitive EiE, all key topic, cross-cutting issue and approach topics. Again, there could be many more, and I'm sure we'll be adding to, well, we have plans to add to it, which I'll mention at the end. The third is the assessment analysis and planning, assessment analysis and design, looking at the key aspects of that. Assessment analysis and then design, including meal and program adaptation, an important part of working in an emergency context. So we try to structure these around almost this combination of the sort of the program cycle, but also recognizing that the foundational aspect of some of the earlier topics. They're moving into some of the more substantive topics like physical and protection, physical and psychological protection and well-being. This comes next because a foundation to any improvement in learning outcomes or meaningful learning is protection, is that children are safe, protected, they're healthy, both physically and mentally. And that's reflected in those topics there. Okay, the last 4 modules, which I should probably get through quite quickly. Teaching, learning, improving outcomes. Obviously, that is actually the largest module in terms of learning hours. There's quite a lot within that. The focus on teachers, teacher supply, key issue in education emergencies and well-being, moving on to professional development, and focusing on pedagogy and planning with a deep dive into learning through play in emergencies, which we'll look at later. And then looking at the issues of curriculum, language and materials. Again, language and curriculum being a key issue in many emergency contexts, especially with refugees. And then looking at the topics of accreditation, certification and transition. and the challenges around that, again, especially in refugee contexts. The final content module is enabling and supporting EIE, in which we sort of back out a bit and look at the sort of ecosystem which supports education emergencies taking place, both at the child's home level, looking at parents and education emergencies at home, which many of us are way more familiar with thanks to COVID. And then looking at the school ecosystem, looking at school management improvement, and then looking at the role of cash in enabling children and families to send their children to school, and then looking at the policy and funding environments, the systems around that, including the local systems, which touches on the localization agenda, and then finally looking at coordinating EIE, looking at the cluster and the EIE working groups and their roles. Those are the content modules. The last two modules, number 7 and 8, they are only relevant to the CAS, the advanced course, in which we do a simulation, a 4-day simulation, followed by a 3-day training of trainers, because then in the final module, module 8, and I mentioned this previously briefly, is that students then go back to their contexts and design, deliver, and reflect and report on an EIE training to their peers, to their organization, to their cluster or working group based on needs that they've identified. And we support that both in terms of methodology and financially. Now, this was a face-to-face training. We've moved it online since COVID, obviously. So those are the, that's the curriculum for the Education Emergency Professional Development Programme. And I'm going to move on now to talk briefly around the EiE Competency Framework. Now, the EiE Competency Framework was launched at I think it was April this year, maybe a bit earlier. I should know. I'm in the professional development, or was in the professional development group, which was part of this. Hopefully, you're familiar with it. The idea around the competency framework was to develop and produce a framework which organisations can use for hiring staff, for supporting their staff to professionally develop, and so on. There's lots of different ways it can be applied. The course competencies input into this process and influenced it to some extent. And since then, what we've done is map against it. So although we had our own competency framework, what we've done is map all of our products and the topics to it. So we've got the 3 courses on the left, which I already talked to you about. At the top are the EiE competency levels. And again, going back to the Bloom's taxonomy verbs like explain, identify, describe, apply, use, participate, design, collaborate, evaluate, lead. Those are sort of 3 levels of competencies that are described in the EiE competency framework. And this is how the course is mapped to that. So broadly, as you'd expect, the advanced course...
Arlo, the slide hasn't changed.
Oh, is it not?
No.
That works. Thanks, Sean.
Yeah.
Thanks, Sean. So I can't see I can't see the screen anymore, but I think I'm pretty much at the end of my bit anyway. Oh no, I'm not. I've got a couple more to go. Would you mind moving on to the current partnerships slide, and I'll very quickly talk through that and then hand over to you.
Yep.
Great, thank you. So partnerships. So the program has been co-funded by IKEA Foundation since its inception back in 5 years ago, 6 years ago now, and is funded until the end of this year, as in core costs in terms of HR primarily, and the face-to-face costs are funded by IKEA. Obviously, those have been less in the last couple of years. We've also had funding support from EiE PDP, particularly for the Western Central Africa region, including some translation of content into French. We're hoping to expand that. Save the Children Norway, through their NMFA funding, also support the EiE PDP, particularly in the Middle East region, including translation of content into Arabic. As I mentioned before, Lego Foundation have been supporting us to develop the Learning Through Play in EiE content, which we're going to look at more in a moment. University of Geneva, a key partner, as mentioned, for accreditation, but also for scholarships through the Canton of Geneva. EiE have become a partner, particularly on the EiE Online course. They both funded aspects of that and endorsed that, and obviously we align with their competency framework. And then, as I mentioned at the beginning, various other EiE sector actors have also contributed to aspects of the course content development and delivery, including those on screen now. So next steps and opportunities. The major challenge, our priority at the moment is, as I mentioned, IKEA core funding comes to an end at the end of this year in December. So we're currently putting a lot of effort into finding new core cost donor to replace the IKEA Foundation. We want the program to continue. We'd like it to expand, but we need obviously a core donor for those core costs. So that then the other support we get can then sort of add to that. So that's our priority. Once we've got that, we want to then carry on, and we will anyway, actually, putting more content online, both for accessibility and sustainability reasons that I mentioned previously. We'd like to explore making the program even more interagency than it is. At the moment, the majority of our students are not Save the Children. They're the sector, typically 20% Save the Children, the rest are from the wider sector, including an increasing number of local and national organisations. We want to actually now make the delivery and management side of it also more interagency. We need to renew and review our accreditation agreement, potentially moving or adding regional accreditation partners as well. We want to improve our representation and accountability mechanisms. They're not as good as they could be. We recognise that and want to improve that. Content and curriculum review will be an ongoing process, but we've already identified some content that we want to add, 2 of them mentioned on screen here. And if we get the funding, we'd like to expand to more regions, potentially Latin America and the Caribbean region. So I'll stop there and hand over to Sian, who's going to talk to you about the reach and impact of the EiE PDP to date. Thank you.
Great. So yeah, hopefully you can still see my screen. So yeah, I'm just going to speak to you a little bit about who we're reaching and through the EiE Professional Development Programme, and what type of impact has been reported through the reach so far. So on the screen here, you should be able to see a map, a representation of the direct beneficiaries of the Education in Emergencies Professional Development Programme to date. You will see that we have a much higher reach in the Middle East and in East and Southern Africa, where we have 2 regional hubs that are set up to facilitate the delivery of the Education in Emergencies Professional Development course. However, this doesn't mean that we are restricted to the delivery only in these areas. We have also had some delivery in Southeast Asia, and in West and Central Africa most recently, which isn't on the map right now. We just see that there's 121, but that's, as Arlo mentioned previously, an area that we do want to expand in, as well as LAC. So there has been some translation of materials ongoing, but unfortunately we do lack Spanish and French speakers to support the facilitation also for those regions. So you might, you'll see that we have a number of direct and then a number of indirect. The indirect is the number of participants that have been reached through the rollout of Module 8 that Arlo spoke to previously, whereby the participants of the CAS then implement Education in Emergencies training within their own context, or are deployed somewhere to implement that training. So if you look at the direct figures, that would be accurate for the number of beneficiaries reached through the fundamentals, the intermediate and the advanced. You can sort of see, I think the captions might be covering it slightly, but you can see that since we have expanded to the online version, we've had a very high number of people reached through the platform. So that's almost 1,891. That means people who have completed the online modules that are open access to everyone. Yep, so that gives you a bit of an idea on the reach. And obviously, as Arlo mentioned previously, with the Certificate of Advanced Studies, which is a much more sort of longer training process and is 450 hours, we have a much lower reach number, which is about 140 at the moment. And the Certificate of Advanced Studies has been implemented in East Africa and the Middle East. In terms of, I might not go through this in detail, but just to demonstrate that we do a lot of monitoring and evaluation to demonstrate the impact of the learning that participants have acquired through the professional development program. And 100% of the participants that participate in the program report that they do learn, they do apply their learning within the workplace setting after completing, which is obviously very beneficial and very positive feedback for us to be hearing. We also noted that 80% of the graduates from the professional development program report being increasingly involved in humanitarian responses, and deployed to emergencies in their country or region. It's important to note here that we sometimes target staff that would be otherwise involved in development education programming, and so participating in the EiE professional development program enables them to acquire the skills necessary to pivot into an emergency context, and that really enables us to work on the nexus, having staff that are able to work both in the development and in the emergency settings. I think the last two are particularly interesting to highlight here. 90% of the graduates from the EiE professional development program have reported changes in their role, including moving on to a more senior role. And 91% of these attribute this to the Certificate of Advanced Studies, or at least in part. So we do have a couple of examples here. One graduate joined sort of a global or a regional EiE surge team, including the rapid response team for the global education cluster, for those that might be familiar with them, or acquiring an international position and contract. So over 5 of our graduates have then moved on to accessing international roles, or moving on to a more senior EiE role in country, including, for example, transitioning to a cluster coordinator. So over 13 of those have. And as Arlo mentioned previously, a very interesting component of the course is tapping into this expertise to be able to use our graduates to teach and facilitate future cohorts within the regions. So this brings the regional contextual expertise also to the trainings that we provide at regional level. A couple of others in terms of looking at the distribution of the reach. So who participates in the professional development program? So in 2021, 100% of the PDP participants are from or based in emergency affected countries. And moving forward up to the strategy period, which is until 2023, we do aim at maintaining that 100%. So we really are targeting participants that are either from or based in emergency affected countries. And so we do get a lot of questions around well, that might be based in headquarters, how they can access this. So at the moment, the PDP is reserved for people that are based in those countries. And another question that we get a lot and that we're working very hard to increase is the percentage of participants that are working for local or national organizations. In 2021, it's increased up to 34%. It was just under 20% previously. And we do aim to increase this reach up to 50% moving forward up until 2023. Some of the challenges in terms of accessing local partners is really some of the language resources. Like most of the resources until now have been in English. And we have had some translation into Arabic, French, and Spanish. So we do hope that that will help to increase access and reach to local partners. Often internet access is flagged as a challenge, but when we rolled this out in West Africa, Save the Children opened their offices for local partners to be able to come and use the internet access within this field basis. often time, and also awareness of opportunities. However, as we do work through the cluster and the EiE working groups, we do hope to be able to disseminate and really reach more local partners moving forward. The remaining participants, so 66%, mostly work for INGOs and UN. However, Arlo mentioned previously, but just to reiterate that only about 20% of participants from the INGOs are Save the Children. So I think, yeah, just to highlight the interagency nature of that. Yeah, so, and then just a couple of testimonies that we thought would be interesting to highlight. One participant who was previously a program advisor, then moved on to becoming a country director for an INGO, highlights that before the course, I could see when things were wrong and I could tell from common sense how to fix some of the problems, but now I actually have the confidence to advocate for the changes I want to see, given the knowledge and expertise that I have from the CAS. So quite a powerful testimony here around confidence that goes beyond just the competencies that are acquired. And just a nice one also from the Ministry of Education, focal point that participated in the CAS in East Africa, from Somalia. He highlights that the knowledge I've learned on this course is around gender transformation, and I want the ministry to understand and get behind this concept. Gender mainstreaming is not enough. Let us be more active in advocating and giving more resources to schools to include the girl child. So just highlighting, yeah, some of those areas that might be beneficial in the longer term for the education and emergencies programming at country level. So I will stop there. That's it on the reach and impact side. So Arlo, I'm not sure if you're able to if you're online again or able to, but maybe I'll stop sharing my screen so that I can see if there's any questions in the chat box.
Yeah, my Zoom's recovered, so I'm here and available. Thank you.
Great. So if there's any questions or comments or just on this first section, feel free to either raise your hand or drop those in the chat box.
Thank you.
Maybe I can ask a question, Arlo and Sean. When you presented the different course modalities, Arlo, we saw that there is also face-to-face courses involved in normal times, of course. Where are these courses located? Where are they taking place?
So the courses, the face-to-face component of the CAS, the advanced course, they take place in the regions. So we've had CASs take place in the pilot was in South Asia, so the face-to-face was in Nepal. The face-to-face in East and Southern Africa tend to take place in Kenya, and those in the Middle East region, the regional CASs there the face-to-face tend to take place in Jordan. Obviously before. We've got two coming up for the East and Southern Africa cohort and Middle East cohort. They're both taking place remotely, obviously, this year, but COVID allowing, in the future, we would like to resume the face-to-face component because it is a really strong component of the course and students really do get a lot from it. So, and the face-to-face, the fundamentals course, which also again, pre-COVID was designed to be a face-to-face, and again, hopefully will be, and recently was delivered as a face-to-face in Western Central Africa. Somehow they were still able to do that at the country level. They're done usually at the national level, or depending where it's happening, actually. Sean, I don't know if you want to say anything about that in Western Central Africa. I'm not sure entirely where those three recent ones took place. I think they were the capitals, weren't they?
Yeah, they took place in the capital. So we implemented the fundamentals in Burkina Faso, so in Ouagadougou, in Niger, in Niamey, and in Mali, in Bamako. And they targeted Ministry of Education staff, both at national but also at the decentralized level. So we were able to provide sort of financial support for those participants and local partners to be able to come to the capitals. And they did do 20 hours online prior to coming to the face-to-face training. And here we either provided internet bundles for them to be able to go online and do the training, or we provided the space in the Save the Children office for them to come and use the internet there. So that wasn't a barrier to access.
Thanks a lot for these responses, Arla and Sean. Maybe I have another one. I'm not sure whether that is planned in your presentation at a later point or not, but maybe you can elaborate a bit on the eligibility for registering in these courses, and especially the CAS and the fundamentals course.
Yeah, sure. So, as you rightly sort of alluded to, the online course is open access, so anyone from anywhere can access that as long as they've got internet. The fundamentals course is organized primarily through the EiE working groups or the clusters. So typically our focal people or the regional managers and the focal people in country will work with the cluster or the working group to reach out to their members to register them for the course. For the CAS, it's a call for registration at the regional level. So anyone who is based in or from or based in one of the countries within the region can apply. And then obviously there's criteria around experience of education emergencies, relevance of their role to, or the relevance of the training to their role in education emergencies or education typically. Yeah, so that's the criteria, but the foundational criteria or the main criteria is where you're working at the time to qualify for one of the regional based CASs, advanced courses.
Great, thank you, Arlo. Maybe you can share at the end of your presentation the link to where these CAS courses would be announced. There is a new round, so people who are interested can have a look there.
Yep, definitely. I'll share the EiE PDP website and all of the information is posted there.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Should we should probably proceed if unless there's any other questions at this point. So the next part of let me share my screen again. EiE online course. We thought this would be particularly relevant because it's open access. Anyone can use it, so you don't need to be in or from the regions where we run the courses, the fundamentals and the CAS, and it may be something that can be shared and used with your staff or your colleagues. So we thought we'd do a deep dive on the EiE online course, looking at some of the interactive aspects of it, which we've just launched. So I'm going to show you one of the EiE online courses. We're going to have approximately about 25 of them in total. We've currently got about 6 released, and there's quite a few in the pipeline coming out soon. But the most recent one to be released was the Learning Through Play and Emergencies course that we developed with Lego Foundation. So I'm going to show you that to show you the structure of the online courses, and then we're going to do jump into the branching scenario component there. So again, I'm going to all the courses, all the EiE online courses are hosted on CAIA, which are the Humanitarian Leadership Academy, who I work for. It's their portal. You're pretty familiar with it. It's one of the largest online learning providers for humanitarians. So all you need to do to access any of the courses on CAIA is register, and it takes about 2 minutes to do so. So this is the Learning Through Play in EiE course, which we recently launched. I'm not going to go through it in detail, but just to give you a quick introduction as to the structure. The first thing we do is state which EiE competencies it links to, and I mentioned that mapping earlier on, and this is an example of that. So the Learning Through Play course links to these 2 competencies in the competency level 1 of these 2 domains of the EiE Professional Development Competencies Framework. We state how many hours. The Learning Through Play course takes about 8 hours to complete, so that's why we're calling intermediate level course. It's not, you could use it as an introductory to course, but you would typically get a lot more from it than just an introduction. So we try to make it accessible, but also a bit more content than just an overview. You can get HPass digital badges. I don't know whether you're familiar with HPass or not, but it's an online accreditation system. The idea is that you have a digital CV and people collect these digital badges, and it's, you know, you can link it to things like LinkedIn, for example, is a good example of where to show your digital badge. This is the digital badge for the Learning Through Play course. You get it once you finish the course and you've completed the end of course assessment activity. In some of our courses, we have multiple choice quizzes. With the Learning Through Play, we try to be a bit more innovative and fun, and designed and developed an interactive branching scenario activity instead, and we'll be looking at that in a moment. Typically, we then have a series of sequences, as we call them, which are a series of subtopics essentially for the course, which you work your way through. Now, what we've tried to do is use as much of the content that's out there as possible, you know, pull together the best of it, the most relevant of it, and use that and develop activities from it. So we haven't been reinventing a huge amount of content. We've been taking what's there and making it accessible and making it hopefully a bit more interactive. So typically there'll be some content on screen there. There'll be links to where we draw the content from. It's all referenced. There's videos to watch. This is the watch icon. This is the one about the characteristics of play by the Lego Foundation. We then have these SCORM package activities. This one is just a fairly simple drag and drop activity. There's more sophisticated ones and more interesting ones that come up, but these are typically to check your understanding or deepen your knowledge on a particular issue, and they're a bit interactive. As interactive as you can get in a self-directed format. So it's completely self-directed. There's no facilitation. There's no online forums or anything. And that's what lightens the load for us to be able to focus on that side of things in the other courses. And we have signposts to optional resources. We ask students to do a little bit of reading. For example, it's 30 minutes of reading here. Then there's another SCORM package activity, where here you have to make the puzzle to pull together the statements, and so on. So this is the typical format of the EiE online courses. Lots of handouts that you can download and take away, use in your own trainings. Optional extras, you don't have to do it, but if you want to go further into that topic, you can click on that link. And then, like I say, these sort of SCORM package activities, which you do to test your understanding or deepen your understanding. And we also invite participants to reflect as well and think, how would that relate to their context, and so on. I won't go through this anymore. This is just the course. What we're going to do now is jump into the branching scenario. So at the end of the course, and I will jump to that, at the end of all the courses, there is an activity so you can gain your digital badge. Like I say, sometimes it's a multiple choice quiz. Here we're doing the branching scenario to get your digital badge. So that's what we're going to focus on, and I'll take you there now. Can you see my screen now? And hopefully it's the SCORM package.
Yep.
Yeah, great. So let me get rid of that. So this is the Learning Through Play and Emergencies branching scenario activity, which students do at the end of the course. And we are going to invite you to do some of the scenes with us to sort of demonstrate its interactivity and hopefully make it a bit more engaging for you. So we're going to go through some of the scenes in this branching scenario. Then we're going to present to you the question, which you have to answer. There'll be 3 options on the screen. And we'd like you, when the options come up on the screen, to click option A, B, or C, depending on which one you think is the right option. It will become hopefully obvious and clear once we start it. So we'll begin. So can you all see this okay, just before I start going through it? Great, yes. Thank you, Sean. So this is your laptop. This is sorry, I should have said before. This is taking place within a fictional scenario in a country called, or fictional country called Galania. It's one that we use in our advanced course. It's one that we decided to continue using for this as well. Galania is let's say it's a fragile state, or it's a state with some fragile context within it. And that's where this scenario or this activity is taking place. You don't really need to know too much about it to be able to engage with this, but students would typically go through an overview of Galania before they do this, if they haven't already. Okay, so in this branching scenario, you're playing the role of an education emergencies consultant with many years of experience from a range of contexts and an excellent range of EiE expertise. You've worked for several years in Galania at the start of your career. You love the experience and have a great understanding of the people in the country. Since then, you regularly do consultancies in Galania for UN agencies, INGOs, and national organizations. You plan to do another now, this time as a learning through play in EiE project with a national organization called Response Without Borders. So now that you understand your role, you're going to fly to Galania. So here's your flight ticket. You're boarding the plane now. Now you're taking off. You're on your way to Galania and the capital, Bardia. Okay, you're on the plane traveling to Galania. During the journey, you read key documents related to your consultancy, including the government of Galania's education sector plan and your consultancy terms of reference. Here's your terms of reference. Again, don't worry about reading and understanding all of these points. But obviously, if you're doing the full activity, which you can do after this, if you want, then it would help to do so. What are those hands that appear at the top of the document? So you are sitting behind an inquisitive child and her parents on the plane. The child tries to play with you. Which activity would you choose to entertain her? So these are the three options. Option A, you play a complicated game with the young child involving a pack of cards. Option B, you slowly sing the alphabet with the child, encouraging her to name animals that begin with the letter you sing. Option C, you clap your hands and, sorry, you clap a pattern and ask the child to repeat it. You take it in turns with the child to create the clapping pattern. So those options are going to appear on screen now. We'd like you to select which one you think is the best option. And you have how many seconds, Nadine? 30?
I will let you to, like from now 30 seconds.
Okay. Thank you. 30 seconds to select the option. And we will select the option which the majority of participants choose.
Okay, 10 seconds more.
So we've got a few more of you to go.
Okay. Okay, I end the poll now.
Thank you, Nadine. So the vast majority of you have selected option C. So let's see if you're right. 2 points, excellent. So the options, you could have got 0 points and you'd have to go back to the beginning, or 1 point, which is good enough, or 2 points, which is great. So well done. The child is delighted by the physical and noisy activity and engages enthusiastically. You play it longer than expected, but the child and her parents are happy, although you don't manage to finish your reading. So that's the feedback you get. So that's the response. And then there's a feedback at the bottom there to give you, to reinforce that. And that's the typical setup of this activity. So let's continue. Well done. Thank you for participating. You're now landing in Bardia, and that's just a fun sort of introduction to the activity. We realized that was a fairly light part of it. It gets a bit more related to the implementation side of things. But so welcome to Bardia, to Galania, the capital of which is Bardia. So Mardi, the senior education advisor at Response Without Borders, meets you at the airport and introduces herself. She explains you're heading directly to the Ministry of Education to discuss the project with Mrs. Elgano, the focal person there. So that's Mardi. And you are now, she's got a car waiting, and you're going to talk about the presentation on the way. So during the journey from the airport to the meeting, you work with Mardi to finish the presentation. You look out the window and see Galanian children playing in the street. As you observe their games, you think about the different learning through play holistic skills that could be developed through them. They could be good contextual examples for the team training you'll be delivering soon. So this is relating to the content that would have been covered in the course unit, which I showed you earlier. Okay, you arrive at the MOE and you meet Mrs. Elgano. Here she is. Now, she says, thanks for meeting me today. Unfortunately, I don't have much time. She's a typically busy Ministry of Education official. So let's get to the point. The main thing we want to understand is how supporting this new learning through play methodology helps us achieve our education sector plan goals. Now, fortunately, you read the education sector plan on the plane, so you're familiar with it. So how would you answer to her? So option A, ask everybody to stand up and play the role of children whilst you demonstrate some learning through play activities with them. Option B, say you'll send Mrs. Elgano some links to your collection of learning through play resources once you're back in the office. Or option C, you use this opportunity to start the presentation you finalized in the car, which starts with a direct response to this question. So again, the poll's going to come up on screen. If you could choose A, B, or C, and you have 30 seconds to do so. Thank you.
Okay, 10 seconds more. Okay, stop.
Great. So option C it is again. Let's have a look. Great, well done. You present and discuss slides that show how learning through play contributes to achieving the MOE education sector plan priorities in all parts of the country, including those affected by emergencies. You share examples of learning through play project successes in other countries you've worked in, which are similar to Galania. So well done. I can see why option A was attractive. And it probably would be quite convincing in many ways, but it probably wouldn't have answered the question. And she was clearly quite rushed and wanted to know straight away, so probably wasn't in the mood to play the role of children. But I think that's definitely a method that could work in other situations. Okay, in the car on the way back from the meeting, Mardi receives a message from Mrs. Elgano. Mardi shows you the message. Hi, Maddie. Thanks for coming to meet me today. It was a very useful meeting, and we're excited about what Learning Through Play can do to support the children of Galania. So well done. That was a good response. Okay, now we're going to jump now. I just need to check. I've got to quickly check where the point we're going to. So bear with me for a second. So from start to there. Okay, stage 3 planning, 31. Stage 3 planning. Okay, so we're jumping through. Okay, now you're planning. Can you still see my screen?
Yes.
Yep. Great. So now we're in the planning phase. So you're working with the Response Without Borders team to plan the geographical locations and the project sites around Galania. So you've trained them. We didn't do that, but you would if you're doing the full scenario. Now you're working with them on the planning of the project. So the proposal was quite vague about the geographical locations of the Learning Through Play project sites around Galania. Which of the following approaches would you advise selecting Learning Through Play project sites around Galania? So option A is, you can select the majority of sites near the capital as they're easy to access. Resources would be easier to obtain and the government can easily visit the sites. This would be good for relations and for demonstrating that Learning Through Play works. Or option B, you can select a range of locations based mainly on need, but also a mix of urban, including the capital Bardia, rural and government and non-government controlled areas. That's something you don't know, but you would if you'd done the full course, that Galania has some non-government controlled areas within it. So these locations will also have different ethnic populations and religions. Or option C is you select purely based on need, even though all of the worst affected areas are the non-government controlled parts of the country. Learning through play can have the most impact on children's psychosocial well-being and learning in these locations. So again, the poll's coming up. Which of these would you select? A, B, or C? Well, I think that's already overwhelmingly option B. So let's have a look. Again, obviously, I might have to go back and redo this activity. It's obviously too easy. So well done. All key stakeholders, including the donor, are comfortable with this approach, and the Ministry of Education also accepts it's necessary for the funding of the project. Yeah, so the other two options would have been well, obviously one was too much around the low-hanging fruit around the capital and wasn't really reaching the need or meeting the need, and the other was, whilst based purely on need, probably wouldn't be acceptable with the government because it was not in their areas that they control. So well done. Okay, very quickly, so we'll jump to the next decision. Okay, so stage 5 TOR. Okay, so you're now going on, you're looking at your terms of reference and you're deciding, and then the fifth part of your terms of reference is you're going to visit some of the Learning Through Play project sites, meet with a team, and yeah, and offer your support where necessary. So you're being picked up early in the morning. You've got a long day of travel ahead of you. You're first going, these are the 3 sites you're going to, site 1, site 2, and site 3. Obviously, you won't have time to go through all of those now. We're going to have a quick look at site 1. There you go in your vehicle to site 1, which is a government primary school. So first, Muddy and you travel to a government primary school in Onorito village, Onara province. You and Muddy arrive at one of the government primary schools the project is working with. The project team has conducted learning through play training with teachers and primary grades 1 to 3 for nearly 4 weeks. Now, you speak to the head teacher and observe some of the lessons. The head teacher says, I like the new Learning Through Play project because students are engaged and excited to learn. Also, some of the behavioural and emotional regulation issues quite common in the school seem to be reducing. However, some of the teachers are reluctant to embrace the new approach because they're concerned about curriculum coverage. Oh, I don't know what happened there. That's wasn't supposed to jump to that. Sorry about that. Okay, let's see if we can do that again. If not, I'll jump to the next one, especially as we're running low on time. I think I've got about 5 minutes left. Is that right, Sean? Yeah.
Yes, sorry, I'm muted, yes.
Okay, that's not working as hoped. So I'm going to jump to the next one. I'll jump to, yeah, jump stage 5, map 2, okay. Okay, so back to your vehicle. You've done that site visit. That was easy, wasn't it? You're traveling to the next site, which is in a refugee camp in a non-government controlled part of the country. You get to the checkpoint. You have an interaction with the guard. He says, "What are you doing?" You say, you tell him what you're doing, and he replies, "You're going to teach children how to play. That's all they want to do anyway. I wish my job was that easy." Ha, ha, ha. You get to the refugee camp, and you meet the team there, or the project lead. Okay, so in an ECD space, you observe something quite different. The children seems to be, so you've done one observation, we're jumping to the second. You're observing learning through play taking place in early childhood development center in the refugee camp. In the second observation, you see something quite different from the first. The children's play seems to be completely child-led. They're running around, throwing things and playing games with each other. The facilitator is sat in the corner observing the children, but not interfering at all. After leaving the space, the project team seem a bit confused about this approach and ask your thoughts on it. Now, what do you say? Do you say to them, tell them this approach is a good example of learning through play? All the characteristics are evident and it's completely child-led, meaning it's good for the children's well-being and development. The other facilitators can learn from this practice. Or do you tell them that the absence of child supervision is a concern? Children may get hurt and will learn little from this unruly play. Suggest that the team take this facilitator aside for an additional session on the role of adult facilitation in learning through play, as well as a reminder of their roles and responsibilities. Or do you do option C? Do you explain that some aspects of the situation are good, like high levels of engagement and adult observation of their learning? However, more adult scaffolding is needed to ensure that there is a range of play which extends their learning and teaches them to play safely. Suggest peer observations as a way to expose the facilitator to good practice. Which of these options would you select? A, B, or C? Well, it looks like everybody has said option C, and again, you're spot on. Well done. And this is without even doing the course, which is concerning. So, well done on that. So, I did have a couple more lined up. We don't have time to do them. You get the idea. And essentially, these branching scenarios are more interactive ways, fairly simple but interactive ways of checking people's understanding at the end of doing a course. And we're going to be rolling these out over more of our EiE Online course units. And for example, there's one being developed at the moment for conflict sensitive education, which is a course we're developing with War Child Holland and will be released in the next few weeks. So look out for that, and the many others that are available or coming out soon. So I'll stop the deep dive into the EiE Online there, as we need 15 minutes for questions and answers. So thank you very much for participating, and I'll hand back to Sian. Thank you.
Sure. Yeah, so I suppose we have about 15 minutes left just for any questions, reflections, comments. Yeah, it's really open. There are no silly questions, so do feel free to type in the chat box, or as we do have a bit of time, also raise your hand and ask a question directly. We would love to see your faces and see who we've been speaking to. So yeah, perhaps we can just hand over to you, see if there are any. So first, there's a question from Luca. What are the approximate costs for the fundamental and online course? Ale, do I hand over to you?
Yeah, I mean, so there's no cost. So the advanced course is, we do charge student fees. that is a tiered fee structure. Now, I know that's not the question, but just to put the other two in perspective, we charge more for UN and NGOs and less for government and local national organizations. In reality, they never pay because we also get scholarships to pay their fees. So it's highly subsidized, and the scholarships are applied to promote access. That's the advanced course. It's a long course. It's very labor intensive. The other two courses have no costs attached. So the online course, obviously there's cost for us to develop it, but there's no cost attached to doing it. It's completely open access and free to do on Kaya. Obviously, for the development costs vary according to the depth length of the course. The Lego Foundation funded one cost a bit more because it's a longer branching scenario requiring more SCORM package development and consultant time for that. The fundamentals course, again, that doesn't cost. That said, we've only delivered it online because it was designed as a face-to-face, but that we didn't get a chance to implement that before COVID happened. The cost attached to that, again, yeah, we wouldn't charge if we were to do that face-to-face. It would depend though on accommodation if it had to be people coming from to a capital or central location for that. So it would really vary. But if it was done within where most people are based, there wouldn't be a cost attached to it. Today, we've covered all those costs related to personnel and any venues.
Great. I'm not sure if there's any other questions, but yeah, we had a couple of questions for you that we would really like to hear your feedback on. So maybe I could just read some of these and then just jump in if you would like to respond or have any comments on these. So sort of looking at how you can support the Education in Emergencies Professional Development Programme and how you might be able to use these products within your organization and or with your partners. So is there any way that you might be able to mobilize funding for the program continuation? Arlo highlighted previously that some of the partnerships that we do have, but we are also looking for funding for the continuity of the program. So any support on that side. Any offers for EiE technical support for the program delivery? As mentioned previously, we're always looking for French and Spanish speakers to support in those regions. So if you have any capacity within your organizations and would like to be involved in the facilitation, there's always opportunities. Again, related to language, offer for support of translation. We haven't finished the translation into the different languages, so if there's any capacity within your organizations, helping to engage more local and national organizations in the program. So I saw in the chat that we have a couple of colleagues, that we had someone from Terre des Hommes, India, for example, or yeah, so if you have any opportunities maybe to create further engagement and increase the participation of local and national organizations. So we would love to hear your thoughts and comments on these points or any other broader questions or reflections that you might have. And obviously, if you don't feel comfortable speaking in English, maybe someone can translate also. Very quiet bunch today. So really that's all we had from our side with Arlo. So yeah, it's really over to you for questions or comments. Was this interesting for you? Have you engaged in have you heard of the program before? Do you think it could be useful or beneficial at all? Yeah, we would really love to hear some feedback.
And I've dropped in the links to the Learning Through Play course, Learning Through Play in EiE course, which we just looked at, but also to the overall EiE course link page, where you can navigate to all of the courses that are available from, including the Learning Through Play and EiE course. And that's where the other courses will be coming up available soon. We've got a whole stash of Module 2 courses coming up, including Child Protection in and through EiE, linking with the new INE course coming out. Inclusion, gender responsive EiE, conflict sensitive education, and so on. Basically all those courses that we looked at earlier in the curriculum overview. So there'll be a lot more coming soon. And then we've got a whole Module 5 range of courses which are developed and piloted but need polishing before we release them. But yeah, between now and the end of the year, there should be a whole range of more EiE online content coming out, which is, like, as I say, completely open access and free. Anyone can use it. Use it for your organizations, wrap your own training around it. It can be used in a very either a unit by unit level or a modular level, or the whole course together, depending on what depth of understanding you need your staff to, or your colleagues to have.
Thank you so much, dear Arla and Sean. Yeah, we have a comment I see from Maria, who is enrolled in the Kaya course and has tried to enroll in the CAS. Okay, great to hear that you are already part of the online courses, Maria, and that you're eager to continue. As you have also underlined, Arlo, I think the beauty of this is really that you can tailor it entirely to the time you have available and to the depth of, content you want to have, by choosing, the online option or one of the more in-depth course options. And also for the online program, you can really choose the models that are relevant for you. And of course, this is open access, so you can also share it with any partners that you are working with. And it's very easy to access for everybody.
And we recognize that there's often a high level of demand from lots of other countries for the CAS particularly, which I completely understand. Unfortunately, we are bound to, and also as part of the whole focus on developing the or offering opportunities for frontline responders in those countries or regions to access the program. That's our priority and will remain so, which is why we have these sort of that criteria around selection for the advanced course particularly. Recognizing the direction of travel is that that less of the global surge type model. We're moving well away from that and moving towards offering support to in various ways, including professional development to people living, working in those contexts or based in those contexts.
Thank you, Arlo. So I think that is relevant for the CAS and the fundamentals course, that there is, of course, in the eligibility for participation, a priority for local technical experts, because we want to build this local expertise really in the first place. But then I think the wide range of online courses that is available offers really opportunities for everybody to also dive in, as we have seen with the examples that you have provided. Thank you so much, Arlo and Sean. This was really interesting, and we will also include those questions that are displayed here in our feedback form. So all participants of this webinar will receive a follow-up email where you can access the PowerPoint presentation again, share it with colleagues in your organizations. Also, we will make the recording available for your further use. So there will be a kind of summary recording provided to you. And also we would like to really invite you to share your feedback on this webinar, which will help us to improve further activities and webinars of the RECI network. So any feedback will be much appreciated. And we will make sure also to include some of the questions that Arla and Sean have raised here in that feedback form. And would be really happy to hear your feedback. So on behalf of the RECI network and the EiE Working Group of RECI, I would like to thank you for your participation. And I would like to especially thank Arlo and Sean for the time and they have invested in preparing this and for sharing, insights into the EiE Professional Development Program. This is really valuable. Thank you so much. And I would like to also re-emphasize that the RECI network is open for any new members that might want to join. And I can copy the RECI link to the RECI website in the chat, where you can have a look at activities that RECI is doing and, what are possibilities to become a member. So we look forward to further exchanging with you, and you will hear back from us with a follow-up email on this webinar in particular. Many thanks, and wishing you all a very nice day.
Thank you very much for having us and listening to us and participating.
Valeria, I just think someone had a question. I don't know, Andrea.
Oh, sorry. Yes.
Did you have a question, or maybe I had the impression I saw
but it's not so. I wanted just to ask, is this online course, did I understand right? It's also already a first part of a CIS or further courses, kind of the introduction to more in-depth courses. I mean, then accessible for everyone.
That's right. We use the online content. It's open access, so anyone can use it. But we also use it as a foundation for our more advanced course. It means in the advanced courses, we can then focus on the sort of application of that and go into a bit more depth, because students will have already gone through the more foundational content in their own time using the online course. And like I say, we strongly encourage anyone to use it, and you can wrap around other trainings on it, organizational. You can add facilitator components in your own way based on that. It saves you then having to pre-teach a lot of that more basic content, and then can build on it in a more sort of nuanced, relevant, organizationally relevant way if you wish.
Thanks.
Thank you, Andrea, for that question. Sorry, I didn't want to cut the questions because we still have 2 minutes left. So if there is any other questions, please feel free.
No more questions, but thank you very much for the presentation. It was really inspiring, and I think we will encourage our local staff to at least try with the online course, mainly those in Ethiopia and maybe also Mozambique. However, there with the local staff, sometimes we face some internet connection problems, but I think.
I should have mentioned that in the design, that we try to keep the design as light as possible. That's why the whole course isn't in what's a SCORM package format, which is quite heavy. We've got SCORM package activities. We try to keep them discrete to make the course a lower bandwidth. It still obviously requires internet and a fair bit of it, but it's less than it could be. And there is also on the Kaya app, which you can get on your phone or tablet, you can download the course to do offline. So you can download it when it's internet's available and then do it offline. I should have mentioned that previously. Again, it's not perfect and there's still accessibility issues for sure, but it is better than it could be in that respect. And the languages that we're translating into, particularly Arabic and French, should also increase access. Not plans for Portuguese yet. You mentioned Mozambique, but we don't have plans for Portuguese just yet, I'm afraid. But following the EiE languages, that should come hopefully at some point in the future, depending on resources, obviously.
I would let you know if I can find a volunteer for Portuguese.
Great, thank you.
Thank you for the information. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So in that case, we will end the webinar here, but of course we remain open to your feedback and suggestions also through email. So thanks a lot for participating, and I wish you all a very nice rest of the day. Bye, everybody.
Thank you.